Okay, next we just have a quick tweet from Malta, who's the CTO of Vercel, and he's replying to Dax, who is the creator of OpenCode. And Dax was saying every AI company that's raised a lot of money is probably building a GitHub competitor right now. If you haven't seen GitHub's like uptime, according to like the missing GitHub uptime page, which is a really cool like open source project that two independent developers were working on, that basically shows like, because GitHub doesn't show their percentage of uptime, they only show like incidents, so it kind of is a bit opaque, but they make it a lot more transparent. And basically their uptime fell to about 85%, so really bad. GitHub has been having a lot of outages. We covered how Ghosty and Mitchell of HashiCorp moved away from GitHub, or at least they're just only going to keep a public archive and they're looking for somewhere else to manage their issues and PRs because of those downtime, and they even wrote the blog before like the most recent downtime, so it was just like kind of a whole mess. Basically, because of that, people have been looking for GitHub alternatives and kind of asking themselves like, at what point is GitHub no longer reliable? Because it's one of those things too where it's like a huge infrastructure lift to some extent. Even though with AI, it would make it a lot easier to just recreate all the PRs and the issues, and that is kind of like a infrastructure layer on top of Git that is something to keep in mind, which is like it was obviously created by Linus around the time that he was making Linux for version control, and I think all of their patches are through email, but I could be wrong with that. But GitHub added this infrastructure on top, which is PRs and issues, which isn't Git native, so you kind of lose that if you move away from GitHub unless you move to like a GitLab or another solution that has similar artifacts. But just to get to this tweet, Malte says, I want this to happen, you want this to happen, we want this to happen, but he's extremely suspicious that this is faster horses energy. It's time for something new. So I think this is very fascinating. It does speak to the main downside I see with Git. There's a lot of benefits, but the main downside I've experienced, at least with Git/GitHub in the agentic world, is the work trees, where it's like when you create a new work tree, it's just in a new directory, you know? It's kind of like a meme. And actually, I feel like one of my friends was like kind of really early to this because he worked on mobile apps where he had to like manage a lot of things at the same time, like different dependencies at once, and it was very like complex, and you didn't want to lose a lot of your work, especially this was like in the 2010s, so pre-AI. So it's like you just create a new directory and then you can work on multiple problems at once with different Git work trees essentially. And then you realize that when you make a new work tree, that's essentially all it's doing is creating a new directory. But then that new directory doesn't have your node modules. It has to reinstall all of them. It has to rebuild whenever you want to run a project. If you have multiple running on the same port, then you're gonna have a problem. So you need to kind of use a incremental port if you want to run multiple versions at once for automated testing or even manual testing. So that's the main piece where I see there could be an issue. So just kind of like I've been thinking about it a little bit, and I do think there could be this future where it's like you kind of build the diffs themselves as like multiple layers that can be contained kind of within one repo in a way. I'm not sure if that really makes sense, but that's kind of how I view it, is like, what is the main artifact that's in a PR? It's the diff, right? Obviously, or even in a commit, it's the diff. So how can you have multiple diffs that don't conflict with each other at the same time? And obviously merge conflicts are a big part of Git as well, which you kind of have to handle. So that's where Multi, I think, makes a lot of sense, where it's like, what is the next level? And there is a response here of this heddle.sh. I don't know what it is, but Multi did respond saying nice, so that's cool. And yeah, obviously agents are writing a lot of the code now, but Git does solve a lot of the problems. It's more about the artifacts on top that we're still gonna have to figure out how to basically reuse resources. And maybe it is one of those things where you just have symlinked NPM packages, so you kind of share all the dependencies across the different work trees, but then it's like if you have a work tree that needs specific dependencies, then you lose that, or you need to like create a new copy. But I don't think that'd be too hard to build, so maybe that's kind of the next step. But I definitely agree with this, where it's like Git and basically in general in AI, like all of the tools we've been using are the same. That's why I feel like the workflows haven't changed that much. It's just about going deeper into the workflows and being able to do more best practices is what AI enables. But it will be cool to see like when these new tools, like maybe Graphite, which I think got acquired by OpenAI, so maybe not them anymore, but those kind of systems where it's like they're trying to build a new GitHub, and I think Linear as well is working on code diff. So it will be interesting to see, and I do think these AI companies are probably trying to build competitors, but it would be cool to just see like a public white paper, kind of like old school, of what that new system would look like.